Chapter 15. Caruso tasted cinnamon and cloves as he sipped the small glass of chai a local vendor had pressed into his hands an hour earlier. The unexpected hospitality had surprised him, coming from a man who had eyed foreigners with suspicion just days before. Caruso took it as a small sign of progress. 4 days into their surveillance operation in Jalalabad, the locals were beginning to accept their cover as humanitarian aid workers cataloging water access points throughout the Eastern District. He set the glass aside, wiping away beads of condensation that had formed in the surprisingly cool interior of the abandoned textile shop they'd claimed as their primary observation post. Outside, midday heat rippled across the paved road, but the temperature remained bearable inside the thick mud brick walls. Movement at the southern entrance, Ryder reported from his position by the window. He maintained a careful distance from the frame, using a small mirror to observe the warehouse across the street without exposing himself. 2 vehicles. Looks like a shipment arrival. Caruso moved to join him, careful to stay within the shadows. Same pattern as yesterday? Similar. A truck comes in, unloads quickly, and leaves within 20 minutes. Ryder adjusted his position slightly. Locals clear the area when these deliveries happen. They know something's off. The operation had taken on a rhythm over the past few days. The kill team, supplemented by Shadow's exceptional detection abilities, had mapped the patterns of the Nafez brothers' operation with growing accuracy. The warehouse served as a distribution hub for weapons moving northward toward Taliban strongholds, and all intelligence pointed to Petrov providing security for the operation. Yet despite continuous surveillance, they had not caught a glimpse of the Kunduz sniper. The relative tedium of surveillance work had settled over them, but Caruso recognized it as the necessary foundation of good intelligence. Patterns emerged only through patient observation. Over the past few days, they've built a picture of the Nafez operation, identifying key personnel, delivery schedules, and security routines. Yesterday's minor success had boosted their confidence. Cooper and Feldman had identified and photographed a mid-level Nafez lieutenant reviewing shipments, providing confirmation of the family's direct involvement that would prove valuable for future operations. And this morning, Sullivan and Shadow had swept their planned extraction routes, finding and neutralizing a primitive alarm system that might have compromised their eventual withdrawal. Caruso's comm unit vibrated against his chest. "Sierra 1, he answered quietly. "Sierra 4 here." Feldman's voice came through clearly. "Intercept on local frequencies suggests a larger shipment tonight. Possible RPGs based on vehicle specs." "Copy that. Good work." Caruso looked at Ryder. "We might have what we need before extraction tomorrow." "About that," Ryder said, his voice lowered despite their secure location. "I've been thinking about our exit strategy. The main highway will have checkpoints. Local back roads might offer less scrutiny. Hayes wants us out clean. No engagement unless absolutely necessary." Caruso pulled out their area map, spreading it across a low table. "The humanitarian convoy arrives at 0900 tomorrow. We join them at these coordinates and exit as planned. Just saying we should have contingencies." Ryder traced an alternate route with his finger. "This canal road provides cover all the way to the northern checkpoint." Caruso nodded, appreciating Ryder's thorough thinking. "Mark it as secondary exfil. We'll brief the team when Sullivan returns." The radio was quiet until Sullivan broke the silence with an unexpected message. "Sierra 1, this is Sierra 2. I've spotted movement on the rooftop adjacent to the warehouse. Shadow and I are leaving our position to check it out." "Sierra 2, do not engage," Caruso reminded Sullivan of the mission plan. "Roger, just going in for a better look." "Report as soon as you identify the movement," Caruso stated coolly, but his nerves had transitioned into high alert. When Sullivan's voice finally came through, it was strained. "Sierra 2, I'm in the building along the canal, and Shadow alerted to something. Investigating now." "Hold position, Sierra 2, Caruso ordered. "We're moving to you." "Just conducting a quick visual check-in." Sullivan's transmission cut off abruptly. "Sierra 2, repeat last," Caruso demanded, already heading for the door with Ryder close behind. A distant crack interrupted their planning, so faint it might have been mistaken for a car backfiring or a door slamming. Caruso froze, recognizing the sound instantly. A rifle shot, dampened by distance but unmistakable to trained ears. He and Ryder locked eyes, both reaching for their communications gear simultaneously. "Sierra 2, check in," Caruso pressed, tension building when Sullivan didn't immediately respond. "Sierra 2, do you copy?" Caruso was already at the door before he finished his question. When Sullivan's voice returned, It sent ice through Caruso's veins. "Contact. Requesting immediate location," Caruso demanded, breaking into a run as they exited the building through the rear entrance. "Western Canal intersection," Sullivan replied, his breathing labored. The sudden absence of Sullivan's voice was more alarming than what had preceded it. Caruso switched channels quickly. "Sierra 3, Sierra 4, converge on Sierra 2's last known position, Western Canal intersection." "Moving now," Cooper confirmed. Caruso and Ryder navigated the narrow alleyways of eastern Jalalabad at a controlled sprint, weapons concealed, but ready. The afternoon crowds parted before them, locals sensing the urgency in their movement and giving them a wide berth. The relaxed atmosphere of minutes earlier had vanished, replaced by the razor-sharp focus of combat operations. They were 3 blocks from Sullivan's position when an explosion ripped through the quiet afternoon. The shockwave rattled windows and sent debris raining down around them. Smoke billowed from a building near the canal where Sullivan had reported taking fire. "Sit rep," Caruso barked into the comms. "RPG blast at the canal," Cooper reported, his voice tight. "I'm 2 blocks east, moving to assist." "Sierra 4, coordinate with local assets. We need crowd control and a diversion," Caruso advised Feldman. "Sierra 2, do you copy?" Silence. They reached the periphery of what had become a chaotic scene. The blast had collapsed the corner of a 2-story structure alongside the canal. Locals scrambled to help those caught in the destruction, pulling injured civilians from lighter debris while avoiding the more precarious sections. Dust hung in the air, coating everything in a pale film that caught in the throat and stung the eyes. Caruso scanned the area, military training overriding the impulse to rush blindly toward the danger. "Cover sectors and identify threats," he ordered Ryder. "This could be staged to draw us in." Ryder nodded, moving to a position that offered better visibility of the surrounding rooftops. His eyes darted across potential sniper positions, while his hand instinctively went to the weapon concealed beneath his loose jacket. Cooper emerged from an alleyway to their right, moving with purpose toward the collapsed building. "I had eyes on Sullivan just before the blast," he reported as he joined them. He was positioned near the northeastern corner with Shadow. Caruso reached the corner first, finding 2 floors and a roof in a pile of rubble. "Sullivan!" he called, pushing aside dusty bricks to create an access point. A familiar whine responded before Shadow emerged from a gap in the debris, dust coating her tawny fur. The dog's alert posture and agitated movement spoke volumes. "Shadow, find," Caruso commanded. "Find Sullivan." The Malinois turned immediately, squeezing back through the opening with Caruso close behind. Shadow navigated the unstable terrain with sure footing, leading Caruso deeper into the wreckage. The dog stopped at a section where a support beam had created a small void beneath collapsed roofing materials. From within, Caruso heard labored breathing. "Sullivan!" He moved forward, carefully shifting debris to widen the opening. Sullivan lay in the protected pocket, one leg pinned beneath a fallen beam. Blood soaked his clothing from what appeared to be a gunshot wound to his upper chest. His face was gray beneath a layer of dust, but his eyes opened at Caruso's voice. "Knew Shadow would find you," Sullivan managed, his voice barely audible. "Petrov. It was Petrov." "Save your strength," Caruso urged, assessing the situation quickly. "Cooper, Ryder, here." They appeared within moments, scrambling through the debris to reach Caruso's position. "We need to stabilize him before moving the beam," Caruso directed. "Feldman, we need medical support at the eastern wall of the collapsed structure. Sullivan's down, GSW to the chest, additional injuries from the blast. I want eyes on that rooftop to ensure Petrov doesn't fire another RPG at us." "Copy that," Feldman responded. "The local medical team is approaching your position now." Sullivan grabbed Caruso's wrist with surprising strength. "Listen," he insisted, each word clearly costing him. "It was a setup, all of it. Petrov lured me closer, the rifle and then the RPG." The injured soldier croaked before speaking became too difficult. "We'll get you out of here," Caruso promised, checking the chest wound with growing concern. The blood was dark, arterial, and Sullivan's breathing had become increasingly labored. Ryder and Cooper worked to stabilize the beam pinning Sullivan's leg, creating a brace from debris to prevent further collapse when they lifted it. "Did you see Petrov?" Caruso asked, applying pressure to the chest wound. Sullivan nodded weakly. "Saw him across the canal. He wanted to be seen." His eyes found Ryder's. "Shadow tried to warn us." Ryder moved closer, his expression tight. "We're getting you both out of here." Sullivan's hand shifted to Shadow's head, fingers tangling in the dog's fur. "Take care of him, Ryder. He'll need someone who understands." The gravity of Sullivan's words hung in the dusty air. Caruso recognized the tone. He'd heard it too many times before, on too many battlefields. A soldier who knew he wouldn't be leaving alive. "Stay with us, Sullivan," Caruso urged as they prepared to move the beam. "That's an order." A faint smile touched Sullivan's dry lips. "Some orders can't be followed, Sergeant." They lifted the beam carefully, Sullivan barely flinching as the pressure released from his crushed leg. "No pain response," Caruso noted with growing dread. The blood loss and shock were advancing rapidly. "Shadow," Sullivan whispered, his gaze fixed on the dog. "Good girl." Shadow whined softly, pressing her muzzle against Sullivan's hand. The connection between handler and dog transcended their military roles. With the beam removed, they carefully extracted Sullivan from the debris, each movement eliciting less response than the last. By the time they reached the exterior, where Feldman waited with local medical support, Sullivan's breathing had grown shallow and irregular. The medical team worked quickly, but Caruso could read the prognosis in their expressions. Sullivan was bleeding internally, and the combined trauma of the gunshot wound and building collapse was too extensive for field treatment. "Evac options," Caruso asked Feldman. "Best option is the NATO hospital at Bagram," Feldman reported grimly. "PJs are at least 45 minutes out." Sullivan's eyes found Caruso's. "Petrov," he managed, his voice fading. "He's waiting for you. Don't give him what he wants." The words struck Caruso like physical blows. Petrov had engineered this entire scenario, using Sullivan as bait to draw them into the open, to provoke an emotional response that might lead to tactical errors, just as he had done with Torres. Sullivan's breathing stuttered, then ceased altogether. The medical team immediately began resuscitation efforts, but Caruso recognized the futility in their movements. He had seen death too often to mistake its arrival. Shadow sensed it too, a mournful whine rising from deep in her chest as she pressed against Sullivan's side. The dog's distress mirrored the hollow feeling expanding in Caruso's chest, the familiar weight of loss settling over him like an iron shroud. When the medical team finally stepped back, acknowledging what they all knew, Ryder moved forward and kneeled beside Shadow. The dog remained fixated on Sullivan, refusing to leave his handler's side despite gentle coaxing. "He trusted you," Caruso said quietly to Ryder. "Take care of Shadow." Ryder nodded, his expression hardening into the masked soldier's war to contain grief until the mission allowed its release. He carefully took Shadow's lead, murmuring to the dog in low, steady tones. The Malinois resisted briefly, then slowly, reluctantly, allowed herself to be guided away from Sullivan's body. Caruso looked up at the surrounding rooftops, knowing that somewhere in this city, Vasily Petrov was watching, perhaps even now, observing the aftermath of his handiwork. The knowledge burned in his gut, a molten core of rage and determination that hardened his resolve. "Secure the area," he ordered, his voice calm despite the storm raging within. "Prepare Sullivan for transport back to base. Our mission parameters have changed." Petrov had won this battle, but the war wasn't over. Caruso's vow to avenge Torres Wilson, and now Sullivan, was absolute, an unshakable promise that would be kept, no matter what. Chapter 16. The memorial service for Staff Sergeant Daniel Sullivan took place at dawn under the shadow of the mountains surrounding FOB Fenty. A row of combat boots, helmets, and rifles stood in solemn formation on the dusty ground. Each set represented a fallen warrior, with Sullivan's equipment positioned at the far end, freshly added to the line of the honored dead. James Ryder stood at rigid attention, his face a mask of controlled emotion as he stared at Sullivan's boots. The early morning light caught the dust motes swirling in the air, creating halos around the assembled soldiers. Shadow sat beside Ryder, the Belgian Malinois uncharacteristically still, as if understanding the gravity of the ceremony. Captain Hayes spoke of duty, sacrifice, and brotherhood. Words that once seemed like military platitudes now carried the weight of Sullivan's blood. Ryder barely heard them. His mind kept returning to those final moments in Jalalabad's collapsing building, to Sullivan's fading voice and final request. "Take care of him, Ryder. He'll need someone who understands." The service concluded with a moment of silence, broken only by the snapping of the American flag in the mountain breeze. As the formation dissolved and soldiers returned to their duties, Ryder remained, his eyes fixed on Sullivan's helmet. Shadow stayed beside him, occasionally looking up as if seeking guidance from his new companion. Caruso approached, his footsteps deliberately heavy enough to announce his presence. The instructor's face showed the strain of recent days. New lines etched around his eyes since their return from Jalalabad. "Command sending a canine handler from Bagram," Caruso announced. "They'll reassign Shadow to another unit." Ryder's shoulders stiffened as his eyes narrowed. "When?" "Transport arrives tomorrow. Hayes wants Shadow's gear packed and ready." Ryder nodded once, acknowledging the order without accepting it. Since returning to base with Sullivan's body, he had spent every moment with Shadow. The dog had refused food for the first 24 hours, only accepting water from Ryder's hand after persistent coaxing. They stood in silence for a moment, both watching as Shadow vigilantly scanned the perimeter, performing her duty even in grief. "She trusts you," Caruso observed. "That's not something that happens overnight with these dogs." Sullivan made sure of it, had me handling Shadow during training sessions almost from the beginning. Ryder remembered Sullivan's insistence that everyone on the team learn basic handling commands. Caruso studied Ryder's face. "If you have something to say it now. Once that transport lands tomorrow, it's out of my hands." Ryder turned to face his instructor directly. "I want to keep Shadow with our team. I'll take responsibility for him." "You're not a certified military working dog handler." "I can learn. Sullivan taught me the basics. I've been around military dogs my entire career." Ryder's voice took on an intensity that surprised even him. "Shadow knows me, knows the team. Sending him to strangers now." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Both men understood what happened to military working dogs who couldn't adapt after losing their handlers. Many never returned to operational status. "Hayes won't approve it without proper certification," Caruso warned. "Then I'll get certified, whatever it takes." Caruso nodded slowly, a decision forming behind his eyes. "Be at the talk in 1 hour. Bring Shadow." As Caruso walked away, Ryder kneeled beside the canine. Shadow immediately pressed against his leg, seeking the reassurance of contact. Ryder ran his hand along the dog's back. "I'll do everything I can." An hour later, Ryder stood before Captain Hayes' desk in the Tactical Operations Center. Shadow sat beside him, alert despite the grief that had visibly affected the dog's demeanor. The ordinarily vibrant Malinois moved with a heaviness that mirrored the team's collective mood. Hayes looked up from the report he was reading, his expression neutral. "Sergeant Caruso tells me you want to become Shadow's handler." "Yes, sir." "You're aware this requires specialized training, certification, time we don't have with the operational tempo." "I am, sir." Hayes leaned back in his chair, studying both Ryder and Shadow. "Military working dogs aren't pets, Sergeant. They're tactical assets assigned where they can be most effective. With respect, sir, Shadow is most effective with our team. He knows our movements, our tactics. Sullivan made sure of that." Hayes' expression softened slightly at the mention of Sullivan. "It was a hell of a loss. For all of us." "Shadow picked up Petrov's scent in Jalalabad," Ryder pressed. "She knows what we're hunting. A new handler means starting over." Captain Hayes stood and moved to the small window overlooking the training grounds. He watched soldiers going about their duties in the dusty compound for a long moment. "I've already requested transportation to get Shadow to the canine facility at Bagram," he said. "Standard protocol after losing a handler." Ryder's hope began to fade, but he maintained his position, back straight, eyes forward. Shadow sensed his tension, pressing closer to his leg. Hayes turned back to face them. "However, I've received a recommendation from our canine training officer. Sullivan listed you as a secondary handler on Shadow's intake paperwork, said you showed natural aptitude to handle military dogs." Ryder blinked in surprise. Sullivan had never mentioned this to him. "You knew nothing about this?" Hayes asked, reading his expression. "No, sir." Hayes returned to his desk and picked up a folder. "I'm canceling the transport to Bagram. Instead, Master Sergeant Kruger from K9 Training will assess your capabilities. If he believes you can handle the responsibility, you'll begin accelerated handler training while continuing your operational duties." "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet. Kruger is the most demanding K9 trainer in the theater." Hayes fixed Ryder with a hard stare. "And if he says Shadow needs to go to Bagram, that's what happens. Understood?" "Understood, sir." As Ryder and Shadow left the talk, Caruso fell into step beside them. He had been waiting outside during the meeting. "Kruger's already here," Caruso shared. "Arrived on the morning supply flight. He's at the training yard." Ryder nodded, appreciating Caruso's efforts behind the scenes. "What should I expect?" "Kruger is old school. 30 years working with military dogs. He cares more about the bond between handler and dog than technical perfection. Caruso glanced down at Shadow. Just be honest with him. And with Shadow. Master Sergeant Kruger was a stocky, weathered man with close-cropped gray hair and hands covered in scars from years of training powerful military working dogs. He watched from the edge of the training yard as Ryder and Shadow approached, his expression giving nothing away. "This the dog?" Kruger asked, addressing Caruso but studying Shadow. "This is Shadow, and Sergeant Ryder, who wants to become his handler." Kruger grunted, kneeling to examine Shadow more closely. The Malinois allowed the inspection, but kept returning her attention to Ryder, clearly seeking cues from him. "Lost her handler 4 days ago in Jalalabad," Kruger noted. "She was in the building collapse after a sniper attack." "Affirmative," Ryder responded. "Dog's still in shock. You can see it in her eyes." Kruger stood, brushing dust from his knees. "Makes this evaluation more difficult and more important." He stepped back and fixed Ryder with an evaluative stare. "Why do you want this dog, Sergeant? And I want the truth." Ryder had expected technical questions about training protocols or handling techniques. The direct personal question caught him off guard. "Because Sullivan asked me to take care of him," he answered honestly, with his last words. "That's an obligation, not the same as wanting the responsibility." Ryder looked down at Shadow, who stared back at him with intelligent eyes that seemed to hold the same question. "Why did he want this?" "Because we're not finished," Ryder said finally, the truth crystallizing as he spoke. "Sullivan, Shadow, our team, we started something together. She's just as much part of the kill team as I am. We need Shadow to bring justice for Torres and Wilson. Now Sullivan, too." He met Kruger's gaze directly. "Shadow deserves to finish what she started. We all do." Kruger studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Show me what you know. Basic commands first." For the next hour, Kruger put Ryder and Shadow through a series of increasingly complex exercises. Basic obedience commands led to tactical movements, building searches, and detection work. Throughout it all, Kruger remained silent, observing with critical attention to detail. Ryder could feel his teammates watching from the periphery. As the evaluation continued, Ryder sensed Shadow becoming more responsive to his commands. The initial hesitation in the dog's movements gradually disappeared, replaced by the focused intensity that had characterized his work with Sullivan. They weren't perfect. Several commands required repetition, and one search pattern broke down entirely when Shadow became distracted. But they were communicating. Finally, Kruger called a halt. "Enough for now." He turned to Caruso. "A word, Sergeant." The two men moved away, speaking in low tones that Ryder couldn't hear. He kneeled beside Shadow, offering water and quiet praise. "Good girl. You did well." The dog pressed against him, the weight of her body a solid comfort in the uncertainty of the moment. When Caruso and Kruger returned, Kruger spoke directly to Ryder. "You've got good instincts, but instincts aren't enough. This dog needs consistent training from someone who understands his capabilities and emotional state right now." Ryder's heart sank, but he maintained his composure, waiting for the inevitable decision that Shadow would be transferred. "Which is why I'll be staying at FOB Fenty for the next 2 weeks to train you properly," Kruger concluded. "Captain Hayes has approved the arrangement. You'll train with me 4 hours each day while continuing your operational duties with Sergeant Caruso's team." Kruger tilted his head and locked eyes with Ryder. "I haven't decided if you're keeping this dog yet. These 2 weeks are probationary. If at any point I determine you're not suitable as Shadow's handler, he goes to Bagram. Clear?" "I'm clear." As Kruger walked away, Caruso approached. "He doesn't give second chances, so don't screw this up." "I won't." The team gathered around Ryder and Shadow, their presence offering silent support. Cooper gripped Ryder's shoulder briefly, while Feldman awkwardly patted Shadow's head, still unsure of the proper way to interact with the military working dog. "Sullivan would approve?" Cooper said quietly. "He always said you had a way with Shadow." "Kruger's the best trainer in the sandbox," Rodriguez added. "If he's giving you a shot, he sees something worth developing." Caruso remained silent, watching the interaction with an unreadable expression. Finally, he spoke. "The mission doesn't stop for this training. We're still hunting Petrov. Shadow is part of that hunt. Make this work, Ryder." Later that evening, as darkness settled over FOB Fenty, Ryder sat outside the team's quarters with Shadow beside him. The dog had finally eaten a small meal, accepting food from Ryder's hand after initially turning away from the bowl. The weight of responsibility pressed down on Ryder. He had always excelled at mastering technical skills and following protocols to perfection. This was different. Shadow wasn't a weapon system to be operated or a procedure to be memorized. She was a living being who had just lost someone she loved, who was now expected to form a new bond while continuing dangerous operational work. "We'll figure this out," Ryder said quietly, his hand resting on Shadow's back. "One day at a time." Shadow turned to look at him, her intelligent eyes assessing her new handler. Then, in a gesture that felt significant, the dog pressed her head against Ryder's chest, releasing a deep sigh. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was a beginning. From the doorway of their quarters, Caruso watched the silent exchange. He saw echoes of Sullivan and Ryder's careful handling of Shadow, but also something uniquely Ryder, the methodical attention to detail now softened by genuine connection. Perhaps Kruger had seen it too. The foundation of a true partnership that could weather what was to come. Because one thing was certain, Petrov was still out there, planning his next move, and they would need every advantage, every bond of trust to bring him down. Caruso stepped back and left Ryder and Shadow to the quiet work of building something new from the ashes of loss. Something that might just be strong enough to finish what they had started. Chapter 17. The pre-dawn chill seeped through the thin walls of the briefing room, mirroring the cold dread that settled in Caruso's gut. The sharp scent of gun oil mingled with lukewarm coffee. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights, underlining the extreme focus needed for the coming mission. 2 weeks had passed since Sullivan's death. 2 weeks of intensive planning and preparation, while Ryder completed his accelerated handler training with Master Sergeant Kruger. The atmosphere carried a weight transcending normal pre-mission tension, a sense of finality that none of the men acknowledged aloud, but all felt in their bones. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez stood beside Cooper, his lean frame and watchful eyes completing the four-man team once again. After Sullivan's memorial service, Rodriguez had approached Caruso with a simple statement rather than a request. "I'm joining the kill team." Caruso simply nodded, recognizing that Rodriguez's vast experience and familiarity with the team made him the natural choice to fill the void Sullivan's death had left. Captain Hayes had approved the assignment with minimal bureaucracy, acknowledging the need for the kill team to be at full strength for what might be their most dangerous mission yet. "Intelligence confirms the weapons exchange is happening tomorrow night," Caruso began, tapping a red circle on the map of eastern Jalalabad. "The Nafez brothers are moving their largest shipment of RPGs to date, and Petrov will be on site to ensure security." Cooper leaned forward, his broad shoulders hunched over the table as he studied the satellite imagery. "How reliable is this intel? After what happened to Sullivan?" "Multiple sources," Feldman answered, shuffling through his notes. "Communications intercepts, local informants, and movement patterns all align. The shipment is arriving at this warehouse before being distributed to Taliban cells throughout the region." Rodriguez traced a finger along one of the approach routes. "I've run operations in this sector before. The local tribal dynamics make security unpredictable. We'll need flexibility built into every phase." His calm expertise filled a crucial tactical gap, providing insights that might have come from Sullivan had he still been with them. Ryder stood slightly apart, Shadow at his side. Their bond had solidified during Kruger's intensive training, evolving into something different from what Sullivan had established, but no less effective. "Petrov expects us," Ryder stated, voicing what they all knew. "He's been setting traps within traps since Kunduz." Caruso nodded, "Which is why we're changing our tactics. He's studied special operations. He anticipates our standard approaches, so we'll give him something he's never seen before." He moved to the wall map and began outlining the operation. "We're not going in as a unified element. We'll infiltrate separately, using 3 distinct approaches that appear unconnected." Feldman tilted his head, intrigued. "Misdirection. He'll be looking for a coordinated Delta Team movement." "Exactly," Caruso confirmed. "Cooper, you'll establish an overwatch position here, posing as a local contractor working on the cellular tower. Feldman, you'll move through the Eastern Market as a medical aid worker, providing real-time intelligence on security patterns." Cooper nodded. "What about Ryder and Shadow?" "They'll approach from the north, using the canal system that runs beneath part of the city. Shadow's scent detection will provide early warning of any counter-surveillance." "Rodriguez," Caruso continued, "you'll infiltrate through the western quarter posing as a local vendor. Your language skills and familiarity with the region will let you gather intelligence from civilians who might have seen Petrov's movements." Caruso paused, studying each man's face before continuing. "I'll enter through the southern district, making just enough noise to draw attention without raising alarms. If Petrov is watching for us, and I believe he is, He'll focus on the most visible threat first. Rodriguez straightened, his experienced eyes narrowing. You're using yourself as bait. The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Caruso didn't deny it. Tactical deception, he said instead. While Petrov focuses on me, the rest of you will move into position. When contact is made, we'll have him surrounded from 3 directions. And if he springs another trap? Cooper asked. Caruso's expression hardened. Then we spring our surprise first. This ends in Jalalabad, one way or another. We roll out at 0200 tomorrow, Caruso concluded. Complete equipment checks by 2100 tonight. Get some rest while you can. As the team dispersed to prepare, Rodriguez lingered behind. Though his addition to the team had been abrupt, the others welcomed him without hesitation, recognizing his tactical value and the connection he shared with them through Torres and the missions they'd run together. You've built something special here, Rodriguez said once they were alone. These men have become exactly what Hayes wanted and what Torres would have been proud of. Caruso began gathering the most sensitive documents, his movements deliberate. They've surpassed expectations, Ryder especially. You know the odds of this operation. I do. Rodriguez watched his friend carefully. You're not planning to come back, are you? Caruso looked up, his expression unreadable. My plan is to eliminate Petrov and bring my team home safely. But you've made peace with the possibility that might not include you. Instead of answering directly, Caruso reached into his pocket and withdrew a small envelope. If things don't go as planned, make sure this gets back to Brooklyn. My mom's address is on it. Rodriguez accepted the envelope with reluctance. This isn't Torres all over again. You don't have to sacrifice yourself to get Petrov. This isn't about sacrifice, Caruso replied, his voice steady. It's about doing whatever it takes to complete the mission. Torres understood that. Sullivan too. Before Rodriguez could respond, Ryder appeared in the doorway, Shadow at his side. A word, Sergeant? Ryder asked, his expression suggesting the matter was private. Rodriguez pocketed the envelope and nodded to both men before departing, leaving Caruso and Ryder alone with Shadow. What's on your mind? Caruso asked. Ryder stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. I've been reviewing the operational plan. The southern approach you've chosen has the highest risk profile of all options. Risk is relative, Caruso replied. I'm best suited for that approach. Ryder met Caruso's gaze directly. If I'm leading this team tomorrow, I need to know everything, including why you chose that route. The statement caught Caruso off guard. You're not leading tomorrow. I am. But if something happens to you, Ryder pressed. If Petrov succeeds in what he's been planning since Kunduz, someone needs to finish what we started. Caruso studied the man before him, seeing not just the technical excellence of the ranger he had first met, but something more profound that had developed during their time together. Sit down, Caruso said finally. There are things about Petrov, about what happened in Kunduz, that didn't make the official reports. For the next hour, they talked as equals rather than instructor and trainee. Caruso shared insights from his study of Petrov's patterns, theories about the Russians' psychological vulnerabilities, and contingency plans that hadn't been discussed in the larger briefing. The sun had fully risen when they finished, casting long shadows across the compound outside. Get some rest, Caruso advised, rising from his chair. Tomorrow will demand everything we have. Ryder stood as well, Shadow immediately alert at his side. We'll be ready. After Ryder departed, Caruso remained in the briefing room, studying the map of Jalalabad where their final confrontation with Petrov would play out. The Russian had proven himself a master strategist, always thinking several moves ahead. However, in his focus on eliminating Caruso, perhaps he had overlooked the team that Caruso had built, the men who had evolved from trainees into something far more dangerous. The day passed in a blur of preparation. Equipment was cleaned, checked, and rechecked. Communication and protocols were verified, and identification materials for their cover identities were distributed. Cooper carefully prepared his specialized ammunition, while Feldman memorized the latest intelligence updates. Ryder worked with Shadow, reinforcing their connection through increasingly complex exercises. Caruso observed it all with quiet pride, recognizing that whatever happened tomorrow, he had fulfilled Hayes' original mission. These men had become elite manhunters capable of tracking and eliminating high-value targets under the most challenging conditions. Whether they succeeded in neutralizing Petrov or not, the kill school had produced exactly what the military needed to combat the Taliban resurgence. As evening approached, the team gathered in the common area of their quarters, sharing a meal that no one commented might be their last together. The conversation remained casual, deliberately avoiding discussing the next day's operation. Cooper told stories of his childhood in rural Montana. Feldman debated the best falafel in Kabul with Rodriguez, who had smoothly integrated into the team's dynamics as if he'd always been part of the kill team. Rodriguez shared an anecdote about a mission with Torres that had the others smiling despite the weight of tomorrow's task. Ryder quietly fed Shadow from his own plate when he thought no one was looking. Caruso watched them, committing each mannerism and expression to memory. Unsure how the next mission would unfold, he wanted to savor these moments. When dinner concluded, the men drifted away to make final preparations or snatch a few hours of sleep. Caruso stepped outside, finding a spot against the wall to watch the stars appearing in the darkening sky. The mountains surrounding FOB Fenty stood in silent witness, their peaks fading into the night. Rodriguez joined him. "Final briefing at midnight," Caruso said, breaking the comfortable silence. "You've done everything you could to prepare them," Rodriguez offered. "The rest is up to fate." "I don't believe in fate," Caruso replied. "Only choices and consequences." Rodriguez nodded, understanding. Torres would say the same thing. The mention of Torres no longer brought the sharp pain it once had. Instead, Caruso felt a quiet resolve, a certainty that tomorrow would bring closure one way or another. "Keep an eye on Ryder," Caruso said after a moment. "Whatever happens in Jalalabad, he's got the potential to become something special." Rodriguez studied his friend's profile in the darkness. "You're an amazing instructor. You've already made him something special. All of them." As midnight approached, the team reassembled in the briefing room for final instructions. Hayes joined them, his presence underscoring the mission's significance. "Intelligence confirms increased activity at the target location," Hayes reported. "Surveillance indicates preparations consistent with a major weapons transfer. Our window is narrow, but the opportunity is real." He turned to Caruso. "You're authorized for direct action against Petrov if the opportunity presents itself. Eliminating him has become a priority, given his continued targeting of coalition forces." "Understood, sir," Caruso acknowledged. Hayes surveyed the assembled team, his expression grave but confident. "This operation represents everything the Kill School was established to achieve. You've trained for this moment. Trust that training." As Hayes departed, the team completed their final equipment checks. Weapons were loaded, communications devices tested, and night vision equipment verified. Caruso stood before them one last time, searching for final words that would encompass all they had experienced together and all that lay ahead. "Listen," he began, his voice steady. "Whatever happens in Jalalabad, remember why we're there. For Torres, for Wilson, for Sullivan. This isn't about revenge. It's about justice." He met each man's eyes in turn. "Trust your training, trust each other, and no matter what happens, complete the mission." The team moved out under the cover of darkness, boarding the unmarked vehicles that would transport them to their insertion points outside Jalalabad. As they cleared the gates of FOB Fenty, Caruso glanced back at the base that had been their home during this transformation from individuals into a unified kill team. The final hunt had begun. Chapter 18. Jalalabad greeted the team with the burned amber glow of street lamps, reflecting off slate and stone buildings. The pre-dawn air carried the contradictions of baking bread from early rising vendors and the acrid smell of open sewers. Distant calls to prayer echoed through nearly empty streets as the eastern sky prepared for the looming blue hour. Dominic Caruso adjusted the worn Pacol hat pulled low over his eyes, his fingers brushing against 3 days' worth of beard growth as he moved through the southern quarter. The weight of his concealed Glock pressed against his lower back, a constant reminder of his purpose. His traditional Afghan clothing over modified body armor hung loose enough to hide his muscular frame. "Sierra 1 in position," he murmured into his throat mic, voice barely above a whisper. "Beginning southern approach." The communication system remained silent for 3 precise beats before Rodriguez responded. "Sierra 3 in position in the western market." 2 more beats. "Sierra 4 established in the medical tent, eastern sector," Feldman confirmed. 5 beats passed before Ryder's voice came through. "Sierra 2 an asset moving through northern canal system." Caruso recognized the calculated delay. Ryder informed him that something required additional assessment. Not an emergency, but a deviation, worth noting. "Proceed according to plan," Caruso directed. "All elements maintain minimal communication unless we have contact." He moved deeper into the city, passing through narrow alleyways where laundry hung from balconies and sleeping cats perched on window ledges. Vendors prepared for the coming day, arranging fruits and vegetables on wooden carts. Caruso purchased a handful of dates from an elderly gentleman with clouded eyes, completing the transaction in accented Pashto that marked him as a foreigner but not necessarily American. The exchange was calculated, making himself visible but not conspicuous. If Petrov was watching, as Caruso believed he was, the Russian would see a solitary operator moving with purpose. The bait was set. Across the city, Ryder crouched in the dank canal tunnel, the fetid water inches below his boots. Shadow moved slightly ahead, her nose working constantly, ears alert to every sound that echoed through the concrete passage. Water dripped from cracks in the ceiling, each droplet sending circles rippling across the stagnant surface. "Easy, girl," Ryder whispered, noting Shadow's increasing alertness. The dog paused, head lifting slightly as she sampled the air. Her posture shifted subtly from routine patrol to focused investigation. Something had caught her attention. Shadow stopped, body tense, gaze fixed on the eastern passage. "What is it?" Ryder murmured, his free hand moving to his weapon. The dog looked back at him, then again toward the passage, her training preventing her from barking but every muscle communicating urgency. Ryder understood immediately and followed. The passage ended at a metal ladder leading to a circular opening above. Shadow sat at its base, looking up, then at Ryder. "Good girl," Ryder whispered, rewarding the dog with a quick pat. He tapped his communicator 3 times, then spoke. "Sierra 2 at Access Point Charlie. Shadow confirms recent hostile activity. Moving to street level for visual." Feldman's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Sierra 4, be advised of increased security presence at the target building. 2 new guards were posted within the last 10 minutes. Ryder paused. The timing wasn't coincidental. Something was happening. "Sierra 2, hold position," Caruso ordered. "I'll approach from the south for visual confirmation." "Sierra 1, keep your head on a swivel," Ryder said. "This has all the markings of—" "A trap," Caruso finished. "I know, but now we know where it is." Caruso increased his pace, weaving through side streets toward the warehouse district. The weight of his decision pressed against his chest. Using himself as bait had always been the most dangerous part of the plan, but now it seemed inevitable. Petrov was establishing a killing zone, and Caruso was walking directly into it. Yet something felt wrong. The setup was too obvious, and the security was too visible. Petrov was too skilled for such an apparent trap. "Sierra 3, scan for secondary positions," Caruso directed. "This may be misdirection." Rodriguez's voice came back steady. "Already on it. Local civilians are avoiding the entire eastern bloc. Something has them spooked beyond the visible security." The sun had fully risen, bathing Jalalabad in light that eliminated shadows and exposed every movement. The city had awakened, streets filling with morning traffic and pedestrians going about their business. The increased activity provided better cover, but also more potential civilian casualties if things went wrong. Caruso pressed his back against a wall, watching as a patrol of Nafez security personnel passed the end of his alley. Their weapons, newer AK variants with optical sights, spoke of better funding than typical local security. Feldman's voice cut in, uncharacteristically urgent. "Sierra 4, critical update. Just intercepted local communications. The weapons shipment arrived early. It's already in the warehouse." The timeline had collapsed. If the weapons were already on site, Petrov would finalize security before moving out. Their window for interception was closing. "All elements converge on the target building," Caruso commanded. "Maintain cover until final approach. Primary objective remains confirmation of shipment and Petrov's location." He moved out of the alley, blending with a group of laborers heading toward the industrial district. His eyes constantly scanned rooftops and windows, searching for the telltale glint of a scope or the abnormal stillness that might betray a sniper's position. Ryder emerged from a different access point than initially planned, helping Shadow up before securing the grate behind them. They found themselves in a narrow service alley behind a row of shops. After the enclosed space of the canals, he welcomed the sounds and smells of the city. Spices from nearby food stalls, the bleat of goats from a small market, and children's voices from a schoolyard. Shadow shook himself, splattering canal water across the alley, then immediately resumed his alert posture, nose working the air currents. "What is it?" Ryder asked, keeping his voice low. The dog moved forward, each step deliberate, nose following a scent trail toward the end of the alley. Ryder followed with his hand always near his pistol. The alley opened onto a small square where several streets converged. A central fountain provided water for local residents, who gathered with jugs and buckets. Shadow stopped at the alley's entrance, his attention fixed on a building across the square. It was a 3-story structure with a rooftop overlooking the warehouse district. Sierra 1, we have a potential position, Ryder reported. Building adjacent to the target area, eastern face. Shadow's behavior suggests potential target presence. Describe the building, Caruso requested. 3 stories, stone construction, blue door. Appears to be apartments with roof access. Excellent sightlines to warehouse and surrounding approaches. A moment of silence followed as Caruso processed this information. That's it, he finally said. The perfect overwatch position for someone monitoring the operation. Cooper, can you get eyes on that rooftop? Adjusting position now, Cooper confirmed. Give me 2 minutes. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm. Sierra 3. Local contact reports unusual activity at the apartment building with the blue door. A foreign man was seen entering early this morning. Matches Petrov's description. The confirmation sent a surge of adrenaline through the team. After months of hunting, near misses, and losses, Petrov was within reach. Hold positions, Caruso ordered. Do not approach until we have visual confirmation. Cooper's voice cut in. I have movement on the rooftop. One individual appears to be setting up equipment. Can't confirm identity from this angle. Caruso weighed his options, considering the lives at stake and the magnitude of the opportunity. If they moved too quickly, Petrov would escape again. If they moved too slowly, he might complete his security operation, and more weapons targeting coalition forces would vanish into the mountains. Sierra 5, do you have a shot if needed? Caruso asked. Negative, Cooper replied, frustration evident in his tone. Target is well concealed behind rooftop equipment. I need a different angle. Sierra 2, what's Shadow telling you? Ryder watched as Shadow focused on the building across the square, his posture indicating certainty rather than mere interest. He's confident, Ryder said. Caruso made his decision. I'm moving into position for visual confirmation. Sierra 1, that puts you in the most exposed position, Ryder objected. I know, but Petrov wants a fight with me, so I'll give him one. Caruso moved out of cover, maintaining his local disguise as he crossed between buildings toward the square. His path took him past food vendors and mechanics' shops, blending with the morning foot traffic while keeping his destination in his peripheral vision. As he approached, the 3-story building grew larger, its weathered stone facade showing decades of repairs. Upper windows reflected the morning sun, making it impossible to see inside from street level. The blue door stood closed, no guard visible. It was too easy, too inviting. Caruso altered his course, moving toward a chai stand that offered a natural place to pause while maintaining visual contact with the building. He scanned the area while sipping his beverage. A flash of movement on the rooftop caught his attention, someone adjusting position. The briefest glint of metal, then nothing. Possible visual on rooftop, he murmured into his mic. Cannot confirm identity. He set down his empty glass and moved closer, circling to approach from the eastern side, where a narrower street offered better concealment. The building's entrance remained unguarded, but Caruso noted fresh scuff marks on the stairs leading to the blue door. Someone had entered recently, carrying something heavy. Sierra 5, status, he checked. Almost in position, Cooper replied. 30 seconds. Feldman's voice came through with urgency. Sierra 4, trucks are being loaded at the warehouse. They're moving the shipment out earlier than Intel reported. The window was closing faster than anticipated. Caruso stepped out from cover, moving directly toward the building's entrance. If Petrov was watching, he would see his primary target approaching alone, apparently unaware of the danger. As he reached the bottom step, movement above caught his eye. A figure appeared at the edge of the rooftop, silhouetted against the morning sky. The stance was unmistakable, a sniper settling into position. Visual confirmation on the roof, Caruso reported, preparing to enter the building. He reached for the blue door when a voice called out from across the square. Sergeant First Class Caruso. The words carried in the morning air, spoken with a faint accent that Caruso recognized immediately. He turned slowly to face the source. Vasily Petrov stood in the center of the square, dressed in local clothing, but making no attempt to hide his identity. He carried no visible weapon, his hands empty at his sides. The famous butcher of Brooklyn, Petrov continued, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent square. I've been waiting for you. Caruso's hand remained near his concealed weapon, but he didn't draw. The square had emptied of civilians with unnatural speed, leaving the two men facing each other across open ground. It's over, Petrov, Caruso called back. We know about the shipment. We know about your connection to the Nefez brothers." A smile touched Petrov's lips. "You know what I wanted you to know, just as you're standing where I wanted you to stand." A cold certainty settled in Caruso's gut. The rooftop, building, and square were all part of an elaborate staging. But for what? "Sierra team, be advised," Caruso said quietly into his mic. "This is not the primary ambush." "Repeat, this is not the primary ambush." As if in confirmation, the sound of automatic weapons fire erupted from the direction of the warehouse. Feldman's stressed voice came through. "Contact at the warehouse. Multiple tangos." Petrov's smile widened. "Your men are dying, Caruso." Caruso felt the tactical situation shifting beneath his feet like quicksand. The weapons shipment, the rooftop sniper, even Petrov's appearance in the square were all distractions from the actual target. His team. "Sierra 2, Sierra 3, converge on the warehouse," Caruso ordered. "Sierra 5, maintain overwatch on Petrov." "And you, Sergeant?" Petrov asked, having clearly monitored their communications. "Will you abandon your men to face me at last? Or will you rush to their rescue, allowing me to disappear once again?" Caruso locked eyes with the Russian across the square, each man taking the measure of the other. Petrov had orchestrated this moment precisely to force this choice upon him. He could have vengeance for Torres and Sullivan or save his team. No choice at all. "Sierra 1 moving to support warehouse team," Caruso said, already turning toward the sound of gunfire. "A predictable choice," Petrov called after him. "Your weakness, not mine." Caruso paused, glancing back at his adversary. "This isn't over between us." "No," Petrov agreed, beginning to back away. "It's just beginning." A shot rang out, the crack of Cooper's rifle splitting the morning air. Petrov jerked sideways, clutching his arm where the bullet had struck, but remained standing. "Sierra 5, partial hit," Cooper reported. "Target is wounded, but mobile." Caruso faced a moment of decision as Petrov staggered toward a side street. The Russian was injured and vulnerable, but the opportunity they had sought for months was slipping away. The sound of continued gunfire from the warehouse made his decision for him. "Sierra 1 moving to warehouse," Caruso confirmed, turning away from Petrov's retreating figure. "Sierra 5, join if you have a clear extraction route." As Caruso ran toward the embattled warehouse, the weight of his choice pressed against him. He had let Petrov escape, choosing his team over vengeance. The right decision professionally, but one that left the promise to Torres unfulfilled. The sound of gunfire grew louder as he approached the warehouse district. Smoke rose from the main building, and the unmistakable crack of Ryder's rifle told him at least some of his team had arrived. The hunt for Petrov would continue, but first they had to survive. Chapter 19. Caruso sprinted through the narrow streets of Jalalabad, his lungs burning with each ragged breath. The scent of smoke and cordite grew stronger as he approached the warehouse, where the staccato rhythm of gunfire punctuated the morning air. A local woman clutching a small child pressed against a doorway as he passed, her eyes wide with terror. Civilians scattered away from the violence that had erupted in their neighborhood. Blood trickled from a cut above Caruso's eye where debris had struck him, mingling with sweat that stung as it dripped down his face. The taste of failure sat bitter on his tongue. Petrov had slipped away again. The Russian had masterminded yet another diversion, manipulating Caruso into making exactly the choice he'd predicted. "Sierra 1 approaching from the south," Caruso reported. "Sit rep?" "Under heavy fire from the east side," Rodriguez responded, his voice tight with exertion. "At least 6 tangos with automatic weapons. Feldman's pinned down inside the warehouse. Cooper's moving to support." "And Sierra 2? A momentary silence stretched across the comms before Ryder's voice cut through. "Northern approach compromised. Shadow and I are circling to flank the hostiles." Caruso rounded the final corner and took in the tactical situation in a single glance. The warehouse stood 3 stories tall, its concrete facade pockmarked with bullet holes and scorch marks. Black smoke billowed from the windows on the second floor. Rodriguez had taken cover behind an abandoned truck, returning fire at gunmen positioned on the adjacent rooftop. The familiar shape of Ryder's silhouette appeared at the edge of Caruso's vision, moving with shadow along the western perimeter. The dog stayed low, his training evident in every controlled movement as they navigated toward the rear of the warehouse. Caruso moved to join Rodriguez, sliding into cover as bullets struck the truck's metal frame with sharp pings. 4 shooters on the rooftop, Rodriguez reported. 2 more at ground level by the east entrance, possibly more inside. Feldman's location. Last contact was from the loading dock. He went in to verify the weapons shipment when the ambush was triggered. Caruso checked his weapon, mind racing through options. Cooper's position? Establishing overwatch from the blue building to R6. He took a shot at Petrov, but only winged him. The mention of Petrov sent a fresh surge of rage through Caruso's veins. The Russian had anticipated every move, setting up multiple traps designed to fragment their team and then eliminate them piece by piece. Sierra 5, I need those rooftop shooters neutralized, Caruso ordered. Working on it, Cooper's voice replied, followed by the crack of his rifle. One of the gunmen on the rooftop jerked backward and disappeared from view. Sierra 2, status on your approach. In position at the rear loading bay, Ryder reported. Door is secured but not locked. Sierra 4, do you copy? Caruso attempted to reach Feldman, but received only static in response. Caruso made a rapid decision. Sierra 3, maintain suppressing fire. Sierra 5, continue eliminating rooftop threats. Sierra 2, stand by for coordinated entry. Rodriguez nodded, his expression grim as he reloaded his weapon. Just like old times. Except this time we're the hunters, Caruso replied. He tapped his comm. Execute in 3, 2, 1. Rodriguez unleashed a barrage of covering fire, while Caruso broke from cover, sprinting for the warehouse's side entrance. Cooper's precision shots continued to pick off rooftop attackers, creating crucial seconds of opportunity. Across the building, Ryder breached the rear loading dock with Shadow. Caruso reached the entrance, pressing his back against the wall beside the door. He could hear shouting inside, commands being relayed in Pashto and accented Russian. He checked his weapon one final time, then moved into the building. The interior lay in smoky chaos. Crates were scattered across the concrete floor, some split open to reveal the RPGs and ammunition they contained. 2 bodies in civilian clothing lay motionless near an overturned forklift. The air hung thick with dust and the acrid smell of gunpowder. Caruso moved deeper into the warehouse, stepping carefully around debris. Movement to his left caught his attention a moment before gunfire erupted from behind a stack of crates. He dove for cover, returning fire, as he rolled behind a concrete pillar. Sierra 4, report position. Caruso tried again, concern for Feldman growing with each moment of silence. Shadow's bark echoed from the far side of the warehouse, followed by Ryder's controlled bursts of gunfire. The coordinated entry was fragmenting into separate engagements throughout the building. Caruso glanced around the pillar, catching a glimpse of a gunman moving toward the central stairs. He squeezed off 2 shots, catching the man in the leg. As the fighter went down, Caruso surged forward, closing the distance and disarming him with a swift strike. Where's Petrov? Caruso demanded in Pashto, pressing his weapon against the man's temple. The wounded fighter's eyes widened with fear. Upper floor, he gasped, blood seeping through his fingers where he clutched his wounded leg. With the American. Feldman. Caruso secured the man with a zip tie and moved toward the stairs, staying low to avoid the sporadic gunfire still echoing through the building. He keyed his comm. Sierra 1 moving to the 2nd floor. Sierra 2, secure the ground level. Sierra 3, maintain outer perimeter control. Roger, came the simultaneous responses as his team executed their roles with the precision he'd drilled into them over months of training. The stairwell was narrow, forcing Caruso to ascend with his back against the wall and his weapon at the ready. Smoke grew thicker as he climbed, reducing visibility to mere feet. The floor beneath him vibrated with the fighting below. At the top of the stairs, a door hung partially open. Caruso could see a large open space filled with crates of weapons through the gap. Smoke drifted in lazy tendrils across his field of vision, occasionally clearing to reveal glimpses of the room beyond. A voice spoke from within, the Russian accent unmistakable. Your instructor is coming, Sergeant Feldman, just as I knew he would. Caruso's muscles tensed at the sound of Petrov's voice. The hunter had become the hunted, yet Petrov spoke with the confidence of a man still in control. Sierra 1, I have a visual on Petrov and Feldman. Cooper's voice came through the comm, barely above a whisper. Center of the room behind the crates. Feldman appears injured but alive. Petrov is armed and mobile despite the earlier hit to his arm. Do you have a shot? Caruso asked, his voice equally quiet. Negative. Too much smoke and they're too close together. Petrov is using Feldman as a shield. Caruso considered his options. Below, the gunfire had diminished to occasional bursts, suggesting Rodriguez and Ryder were securing the ground floor. Time was running out. Soon, local forces would respond to the firefight, complicating an already volatile situation. Sierra 3, Sierra 2, status. Ground floor clear, Rodriguez reported. Rear secured, Ryder added. Shadow found explosives rigged near the loading bay. Disarming now. Every piece of the tactical puzzle slid into place in Caruso's mind. Petrov had orchestrated multiple layers of traps, each designed to catch them if they escaped the previous one. The weapons shipment, the rooftop ambush, and the explosives at the exit points were all precisely calculated to destroy Caruso's team once they entered the warehouse. But Petrov had made one critical miscalculation. He had underestimated what these men had become under Caruso's guidance. "All elements hold position," Caruso ordered. "I'm going in." Sierra 1, that's exactly what he wants, Cooper objected. "I know," Caruso replied. "That's why it will work." Before anyone could respond, Caruso kicked the door fully open and stepped into the smoke-filled room. His weapon moved in a smooth arc, targeting the center area where Feldman and Petrov waited. "It took you long enough, Caruso," Petrov called out. As the smoke shifted, Caruso could see him clearly for the first time. The Kunduz sniper stood behind Feldman, who kneeled on the floor, blood seeping from a wound in his shoulder. Petrov's left arm hung awkwardly where Cooper's bullet had struck him, but his right maintained a steady grip on the pistol pressed against Feldman's head. His face, previously known only from grainy photographs, displayed the cold calculation of a predator. "Let him go, Petrov," Caruso said, his voice steady as he advanced slowly. "This is between you and me." Petrov's mouth quirked in a half smile. "Finally, we agree on something. I'm here. Now let him go." Feldman's eyes met Caruso's, communicating something beyond words. Despite the fear evident in his expression, the young analyst maintained his composure, his mind visibly working through the situation. "You know how this ends, don't you?" Petrov asked, his accent thickening with emotion. "One of us doesn't leave this room alive." "That was always the plan," Caruso replied. Feldman's eyes widened slightly, registering something beyond Caruso's field of vision. Someone else had entered the room. Caruso maintained his focus on Petrov, giving no indication he'd received Feldman's warning. "Release my man, and we'll settle this properly." Petrov seemed to consider this offer, his cold eyes calculating the odds. "You're forgetting, Caruso. I don't play by your rules." In a sudden movement, Petrov yanked Feldman upward, using him as a shield while bringing his weapon to bear on Caruso. Time seemed to slow as Caruso recognized the trap closing around him. Petrov hadn't been waiting for Caruso to enter the room. He'd been waiting for the perfect moment when Caruso's attention was divided. Three things happened simultaneously. Feldman drove his elbow backward into Petrov's wounded arm, causing the Russian to stagger. A silhouette flashed from the periphery of the room, resolving into Shadow's sleek form with Ryder close behind. And Caruso, seeing his opening, lunged forward. Petrov's weapon discharged, the bullet tearing through Caruso's right shoulder, causing him to drop his Glock. The pain registered distantly as Caruso crashed into both men, sending all three tumbling across the floor. Feldman rolled free as Petrov and Caruso grappled for control of the weapon. "Sierra 1 is engaged," Ryder's voice cut through the comm channel. "All elements converge on the third floor." Caruso felt his strength ebbing as blood soaked his clothing, but adrenaline kept him focused on the immediate threat. Petrov fought with the desperate fury of a cornered animal, his wounded arm seemingly forgotten as he struggled to bring his weapon to bear. Their eyes locked as they wrestled for control, each man recognizing the determination in the other. Caruso knew with instant clarity that this was how it would end, here in this smoke-filled room, with his team's fate hanging in the balance. "Ryder!" Caruso shouted. "Get Feldman out of here!" Petrov's face contorted with rage. "None of you are leaving," he snarled. His free hand reached for something at his belt, a small device with a blinking light, a detonator. Understanding dawned in Caruso's mind. The entire building was rigged to blow. In that frozen moment, Caruso understood his team would never make it out in time. He made his final decision. With a sudden surge of strength, he reversed his momentum, no longer trying to take the weapon from Petrov, but instead driving both of them toward the window at the far end of the room. Petrov realized what was happening too late. Caruso drove them both through the glass with explosive force, shards slicing through clothing and skin as they plummeted 3 stories toward the street below. The detonator slipped from Petrov's grasp, clattering away onto the pavement. The impact came with brutal force. Caruso felt bones shatter as they struck the ground, Petrov beneath him taking the brunt of the fall. Pain exploded through his consciousness, then receded to a distant throb as shock took hold. Above, figures appeared at the broken window. Ryder's voice, calling his name. the sound of boots on pavement as his team rushed to his position. Petrov lay motionless beneath him, eyes open but unseen. The Kunduz sniper's reign of terror had ended on a dusty Jalalabad street. Caruso tried to move and found he couldn't. Blood pooled beneath him. Too much blood. The world began to dim around the edges as Rodriguez reached him first, dropping to his knees beside his fallen brother. "Medic! We need a medic!" Rodriguez shouted, pressing his hands against Caruso's wounds in a futile attempt to stem the bleeding. Ryder appeared next, his face a mask of controlled anguish as he recognized what Caruso already knew. He suffered from wounds that couldn't be healed. Ryder gripped Caruso's hand as Shadow pushed forward, whining softly as he nuzzled Caruso's arm, sensing the life ebbing from the man. Cooper and Feldman joined the circle, forming a protective perimeter around their fallen instructor, even as local forces converged on the scene. The brotherhood Caruso had forged stood vigil in his final moments. "The mission," Caruso managed, blood bubbling at his lips. "Complete it." "We will," Ryder promised, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "We'll get justice for Torres and Sullivan. And for you." Caruso's vision narrowed to a tunnel of light surrounding Ryder's face. In the young leader, he saw everything he'd hoped to build, a hunter worthy of the prey he would pursue. "You're the best I've ever trained," Caruso whispered. "Give them hell, Ryder." The world faded to white as Dominic Caruso, the butcher of Brooklyn, took his final breath on a Jalalabad street, his mission complete, his legacy secured in the men who kneeled around him. The last lesson had been taught. The student had become the master. Chapter 20. Sergeant First Class James Ryder felt the familiar vibration of the Black Hawk as it cut through the purple and orange evening sky above Bagram. The helicopter's rotors sliced the air with mechanical precision, their rhythmic thump matching the steady beat of his heart. 21 months had passed since Jalalabad, yet the weight of that day remained, transformed from raw grief into something harder, more focused. Shadow lay at Ryder's feet, the Belgian Malinois entirely still, except for his alert eyes tracking every movement within the helicopter. Cooper, Feldman, and Rodriguez sat silently in the seats across from them. 5 minutes to target, the pilot announced through the comm system. Ryder gave a thumbs up and turned to his team. "Final check. This HVT moves every 12 hours, which gives us a narrow window." "We'll get him," Cooper said with quiet confidence, the glint in his eyes matching the predatory focus Ryder had seen countless times over the past 21 months. Feldman looked up from his satellite imagery. "Thermal shows 8 heat signatures in the compound. Target should be in the northeast room based on pattern analysis. 2 guards at the entrance, 2 roaming the perimeter." "Shadow and I take point," Ryder confirmed. "Cooper, overwatch from the ridge. Feldman and Rodriguez secure the perimeter. Clean, quiet, and quick." The men nodded, each understanding their role with the intuitive connection that came from countless operations together. They had become something beyond a team, beyond even the brotherhood Caruso had initially forged. They were an extension of each other, a living weapon with 4 distinct components functioning as one. The helicopter banked sharply, beginning its descent toward a small clearing 2 kilometers from their target. Through the small window, Ryder caught glimpses of the Afghan landscape below, its harsh beauty rendered in shades of ochre and brown in the fading light. "Final gear check," Ryder ordered as the Black Hawk touched down, its rotor wash whipping dust into miniature cyclones around them. As the helicopter lifted off, they moved out and formed a defensive perimeter, leaving them in near total silence. Shadow immediately went to work, nose testing the air as they began their approach toward the target compound. Their movement through the rocky terrain was fluid and silent, each man anticipating potential threats while maintaining tactical spacing. The 21 months since Jalalabad had honed them into something beyond elite, each mission building upon the last, until they operated with near-perfect precision. As they approached the compound, Cooper peeled off to establish his overwatch position on a rocky outcrop with clear sightlines to the target building. Ryder signaled to Feldman and Rodriguez, who moved to secure the perimeter, eliminating the 2 guards with silent efficiency. Ryder kneeled beside Shadow, his hand resting lightly on the dog's back. "Find," he whispered. Shadow moved forward, leading Ryder toward the compound entrance, his body language communicating what his training prevented him from vocalizing. 2 more guards waited inside, unaware of the death approaching their position. The takedown was clinical. Shadow disabled 1 guard while Ryder neutralized the other, and neither man had time to raise an alarm. They moved through the compound like ghosts, Shadow's acute senses guiding them past sleeping quarters, where low-level fighters remained unaware of the intruders in their midst. Northeast corner room, 20 meters ahead. Feldman's voice confirmed through the comm. Ryder approached the door where their high-value targets slept, oblivious to the justice that had tracked him across 3 provinces. The Taliban commander had orchestrated attacks on coalition forces that had killed 14 Americans and countless Afghan civilians. His name had been on their target list for months. The door opened with minimal resistance. Inside, the commander lay sleeping on a simple cot, his AK-47 propped against the wall just out of reach. Ryder signaled to Shadow, who positioned himself to block any potential escape. The man's eyes snapped open as Ryder approached, hand reaching instinctively for his weapon. He wasn't fast enough. Ryder's single shot into his forehead with his suppressed pistol was precise and lethal. The commander's body immediately fell limp. Another name checked off the ever-growing list of enemies neutralized by the kill team. Target eliminated, Ryder reported. Extraction in 2 minutes. They withdrew as silently as they had entered, leaving behind a compound that would soon erupt in chaos when the bodies were discovered. They would be miles away by then, already planning their next operation. The helicopter awaited them at the extraction point, rotors spinning as they approached. As they lifted off, Ryder looked down at the land hidden under a blanket of darkness. It was another successful mission, yet the hollow space inside him remained unfilled. The flight back to Bagram passed in comfortable silence, each man processing the operation in his own way. Ryder ran his hand along Shadow's back, feeling the solid warmth of the dog pressed against his leg. Of all the changes the past 2 years had brought, his relationship with Shadow remained the most significant. The dog had become his anchor, a living reminder of Sullivan's sacrifice and the responsibility Ryder had accepted in that smoke-filled warehouse in Jalalabad. Bagram Air Base appeared on the brightening horizon, a sprawling complex of concrete barriers, plywood structures, and military equipment dotting the Afghan landscape. The Black Hawk descended toward the landing zone, where a solitary figure awaited their arrival. Captain Ryan Brennan stood ramrod straight on the tarmac, his angular face set in its usual expression of controlled intensity. At 38, Brennan was younger than Hayes, but carried the same quiet authority that commanded respect without demanding it. Brennan had inherited the kill team when Captain Hayes was transferred to a new post in the United States following Caruso's death. Unlike many officers who would have dismantled and rebuilt such a specialized unit, according to their own preferences, Brennan had recognized what he had in Ryder and his men. He had given them the space and resources to continue their work, intervening only when necessary to provide guidance or authorization. The helicopter touched down, its rotors slowing as the team disembarked. Brennan approached, his eyes immediately going to Ryder for confirmation. "Take another HVT off the list," Ryder reported. Brennan nodded. "Debrief in my office at 0900. The captain turned to leave, then paused. "Ryder, a word." The team continued toward their quarters while Ryder remained behind, Shadow at his side. "You've been pushing hard," Brennan observed once they were alone. 3 operations in 10 days. The intelligence was solid. The windows of opportunity were narrow. Brennan studied Ryder's face for a moment. 37 high-value targets in 21 months. That's more than any other team in the theater. At some point, even the best operators need downtime. "We're fine, sir. The team is functioning at peak efficiency. I'm not questioning your effectiveness." Brennan's tone softened slightly. "Sergeant Caruso built something remarkable when he trained you all, but even he knew when to pull back." The mention of Caruso sent a familiar pang through Ryder's chest. "With respect, sir, I knew him well. He never pulled back when it mattered." The words hung in the air between them, both men knowing their truth but neither willing to examine it more closely. "My office at 0900, Brennan finally said. "There's something you'll want to hear." After a quick shower and breakfast, Ryder headed to the team's shared quarters. Cooper looked up as Ryder entered. Brennan seemed intense, more than usual. "Something's coming," Ryder replied, dropping onto his cot. "He wants me in his office in 90 minutes. Rodriguez paused in his equipment maintenance. "Good news or bad?" "Unclear." Ryder checked his watch. "We only have a few hours before our next briefing, so get some rest." The promotion to Sergeant First Class had come 6 months after Jalalabad, a recognition of Ryder's leadership capabilities and his team's success. The higher rank reminded him of the responsibility he'd inherited, not just to the mission, but to the men who relied on him. At precisely 0900, Ryder knocked on Captain Brennan's door, Shadow at his heel. The office was Spartan, with only a desk, 2 chairs, and a map of Afghanistan on the wall. No personal touches beyond a worn hardback copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations that Brennan kept on his desk. "Enter," Brennan called. Ryder stepped inside, noting the intelligence folder open on the desk. Brennan gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit down, Sergeant. This might take a while." Once seated, Ryder waited as Brennan gathered his thoughts, shadows settling at his feet with the patient stillness that characterized him during briefings. "Since you've arrived at Bagram, your team has systematically eliminated high-value targets across Afghanistan," Brennan began. "You've dismantled terrorist cells, disrupted supply chains, and saved countless lives. But there's one operation you've never been able to complete." Ryder felt his pulse quicken. "The Nafez brothers." Brennan nodded, sliding a surveillance photo across the desk. "Amir Nafez, the younger brother, runs their weapons distribution network." Ryder studied the image of a man in his early 30s with a neatly trimmed beard and cold, calculating eyes. The Nafez brothers had scattered after Jalalabad, vanishing into the tribal regions along the Pakistan border, where even the most sophisticated intelligence struggled to track them. "We've located him," Brennan said. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The Nafez brothers had orchestrated the trap that killed Caruso. They had funded Petrov's operations, provided him sanctuary, and shared intelligence that had cost American lives. Their elimination had remained the team's ultimate goal, always just beyond reach. "Where?" Ryder asked, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "He's returned to Jalalabad, and the family is moving significant quantities of weapons to Taliban cells throughout eastern Afghanistan again. He must feel safe enough to return," Ryder thought. "We'll have to change that." Brennan opened the intelligence folder and shared the latest intel. "I know what this means to your team," Brennan continued. "To you personally, but we both know this is about more than strategy." Ryder met the captain's gaze directly. "Caruso deserves justice, sir. Torres, Wilson, and Sullivan, too." "Yes, they do," Brennan agreed. He'd become familiar with the names that drove the Delta Force kill team to excellence on every mission. "Which is why I'm authorizing a direct action mission to eliminate Amir Nafez." Ryder rose to his feet. His decision had been made the moment Brennan had shown him the photograph. "We'll be ready to move out tomorrow evening." "I haven't given you the operational plan yet," Brennan noted. "With respect, sir, we've been planning this mission for 21 months. The only variable was the location." Ryder's voice carried absolute certainty. "We know exactly what to do." Brennan studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. Full briefing at 1800 tomorrow with the entire team. Make sure they're prepared." "They're always prepared, sir." As Ryder left the office, Shadow moved smoothly to his side, and he felt a familiar intensity building in his chest. The mission they had waited for, planned for, and trained for was finally at hand. Amir Nafez would soon face the consequences of his actions. The team listened in focused silence as Ryder delivered the news. Their reactions were subtle, but unmistakable. "For Caruso," Cooper said quietly. "For all of them," Rodriguez added. The team dispersed to prepare, each man approaching the task with the solemn intensity the mission demanded. Ryder moved to the small footlocker beside his cot, removing a worn notebook. Inside, a detailed analysis of the Nafez brothers' operations filled dozens of pages, intelligence gathered, and theories developed during the long months since Jalalabad. Shadow pressed against his leg, sensing the shift in Ryder's emotional state. The dog had become attuned to such nuances, often responding to thoughts Ryder hadn't even verbalized. "We're going to finish this," Ryder murmured, his hand finding the familiar warmth of Shadow's fur. The next day arrived with the absolute clarity that preceded momentous events. Ryder stood on the tarmac as the Blackhawks' rotors began their rhythmic rotation, wind whipping dust around the team as they prepared to board. Shadow remained at Ryder's side, alert and ready, sensing the importance of the mission ahead. As they boarded the helicopter, Ryder felt the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. Caruso had built this team and forged them into the finest assassins in the U.S. military. Now Ryder carried that legacy forward. The Black Hawk lifted off, rising into the clear Afghan sky. Below them, the landscape stretched in every direction, buildings and streets visible under the moonlight. Somewhere ahead lay Amir Nafez, unaware that justice was coming for him. Ryder closed his eyes briefly, the memory of Caruso surfacing in his mind. Not the broken body on a Jalalabad street, but the instructor who had stood before them on that first day at FOB Fenty, determined to transform them into the kill team they are today. "We're going to deliver justice tonight," Ryder whispered, words meant only for himself and the memory of those they'd lost. "Just like you taught us." The Black Hawk banked toward the silhouette of proud mountain peaks, carrying the kill team toward their destination. The unstoppable hand of their brand of justice was coiled to strike. Thank you for listening. If you liked The Instructor, you'll love observing James Ryder unleash his brand of justice in absolute authority. Book 1 in the James Ryder thriller series.
Made with Spoken. Now available at spoken.press.